My name is Neil Ruane. As you can hear from my accent, I'm not French, but I've been living in Burgundy for 20 years, and I'm export sales manager for Boissé in the United States. And today, very, very happy to welcome 50 people from Total Wine & More for a very exciting visit of Antonin Rodet, our winery in the Côte Chalonnaise in the south of Burgundy. Of course, we would have loved for everybody from Total Wine & More to be with us today, but unfortunately, I guess a few of you are 1,000 miles away. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about what I do as an export manager. So I'm responsible for exporting the wines from the Boissé Group, responsible for a number of different wineries throughout the United States in different distribution channels, and of course specifically with the brands that are exclusive to Total Wine & More. Those are the wines from Chateau de Rie and Chateau de Mercury, which are our domain properties. So I have a sales role. I go out looking for business, look for new partners, but much more interestingly, I have a role in terms of educating staff, with people I meet, distributor staff, sales staff, and meeting customers themselves. So my role goes from a very strategic role to actually getting my hands dirty in the stores. I've done a bunch of in-store tastings for some of your Total Wine & More stores. Some of you may recognise me, which really help to educate both the Total Wine & More staff and the customers themselves about what is Burgundy, about what our wines are, because it is probably one of the most difficult areas of the world to understand in terms of wine. So why is Burgundy so difficult to understand? Well, to understand that, a few facts which are very interesting. Burgundy produces less than 5% of total appellation contrôlé wine in France, and yet we have over a third of the different appellation. And what characterises Burgundies is that we have all these Pinot Noirs and Chardonnays, because they're the only grapes that are really used in making the wines, and all those wines are named after the villages they come from rather than the grape varietals. And so we have 101 different appellations within Burgundy, each of them making wines that are slightly different from their neighbours because of what we call the terroir, which is the geographical and climatic conditions specific to those different villages. So to understand Burgundy, okay, it's all Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, which is the easy part, but you really have to know a little bit about the soil types, the climates, the individual villages, and what sort of wines come from those villages. Then of course it gets even more complicated when you add in the vintage component, because vintage is probably more important in Burgundy than any other winemaking region in the world too. And that is because climatically the weather conditions in Burgundy are very variable. It's cool climate. I'm speaking to you today in late May from a very cool and rainy Mercury, where of course in some years I might be in a short sleeve shirt and it might be very warm. So the weather conditions very variable, and of course we only work with these single varietals. Pinot Noir is the most difficult grape to grow, with the thinnest skins, the most difficult wines to make, and so from one year to the next those wines will be very different compared to the wines from the same vineyard, excuse me, from previous years. But as our mutual friend Alfio said to me this morning, vive la différence. That is the real excitement about Burgundy, is that every vintage is different. Burgundy wine isn't like Coca-Cola. Every wine is an adventure. Every vintage is a new experience to discover. Now, the heart of Burgundy is called the Côte d'Or, which is comprised of the Côte de Nuit. Côte in French in this term really means slopes. So Côte de Nuit are the slopes around the town of Nuit Saint-Georges, and the Côte de Beaune, which are the slopes around the town of Beaune. And Burgundy, each of these villages I talked about, each of these sections, the Côte de Nuit, the Côte de Beaune, the Côte Chalonnaise and Macron, are renowned for making different styles of wines. And one easy way to remember is that the darkest, most intense Pinot Noirs all come from the Côte de Nuit. All the Grand Cru Reds in Burgundy, except one appellation, which is Corton, all come from the Côte de Nuit. And all the Grand Cru Whites in Burgundy, the great whites, all come from the Côte de Beaune. Now, why is that? And we come back to the real term of terroir. What is physically under your feet in Nuit Saint-Georges, in soil terms, is approximately 30 million years older of what's directly under your feet in bone. The reason for that is that when these slopes were formed, which were at the same time as the Alps, just after the Jurassic period in Burgundy, when the Alps were thrown up and this small range of foothills that run north-south were created at the same time, the big wave was formed between the north and the south. In the north, you have the older soils, very deep underlying limestone bedrock and more clay soils in the north, which are real Pinot soils, better for growing Pinot Noir. In the south, over the next millennia that followed that first creation of the Alps and the Côte d'Or, you had successive layers of sedimentary soils, much lighter, whiter, chalky soils, filling up this lower part. And these lighter, whiter soils are much better for creating these great Chardonnays. Now, the easy way to remember this, if you look at the map of Burgundy, is what we call the Neapolitan ice cream theory of Burgundy. So, in the north, the intense Pinot Noirs, you can think of that as your chocolate slice, the Neapolitan ice cream. Famous appellations, of course, like Clos Vougeot, Gevrey-Chambertin, Vaughan-Romanée, those great darker Pinots from the north. In the middle, you have these softer, lighter, more feminine styles of Pinot Noir, which are on the Côte de Beaune soils, a transitional soil from these Pinot to these Calcas soils. And you can think of that as the strawberry slice, so classic soft Burgundies like Savigny-les-Beaunes, Beaune, Volnay, for example. And then in the south, you have the vanilla slice, which is, of course, the great whites of Burgundy, Meursault, Puligny-Marochet, Chassagne-Montrachet. Now, of course, it's more complicated than that because geology doesn't come in Neapolitan ice cream blocks. So that idea has sort of morphed into what I call the chocolate marble cake theory of Burgundy. So you still have dark chocolate at the top and milk chocolate in the middle and white chocolate in the bottom, but you have veins of each of these soil types running through the different vineyards, and so you do end up with wines that you can call cross-dressers, sometimes we call them in Burgundy. Feminine wines appearing in more masculine terroir. Chambol-Musigny, for example, is a very soft, delicate Pinot Noir in the heart of the Pinot land, where of course Pommard can be a very muscular, masculine Pinot style of Pinot Noir, actually in the heart of the softer Côte de Beaune style reds. And this is because you have these veins of different soils and nuances of what we call the argilo-calcaire mix, which is the mix of clay and limestone soils that constitute the Burgundy terroir. Now, the fact that Burgundy can be so complicated means that in front of your fantastic Burgundy section in the Total Wine and More stores, customers can be completely bewildered because they just look at a bunch of labels. They just look at a bunch of labels with different village names on. What you can bring, and I hope what I can bring to you, that you can bring to your customers, is a little bit of understanding to help orientate those customers about what they can expect from one of these individual labels. So that if a customer is looking for a light, soft, feminine style of Pinot Noir, you can orientate them towards a Volnay or a Savigny-les-Beaunes. If they're looking for a little bit more intensity, a little bit more darker fruit and a little more tannin, you can orientate them towards Nuit Saint-Georges. If they're looking for light, bright, unoaked Chardonnays, you can tell them about Puy-Frisé, and you can tell them about Chablis. If they're looking for those rich, textured, layered, beautifully oaked Burgundy whites, you can talk about Meursault and Puligny-Marochet. Having done in-store tastings for you guys throughout the Total Wine and More network, I know that this is the real difference that Total Wine and More make, the staff knowledge, and this is why people come and buy wines at your stores and they don't do it online and they don't do it in other stores, because they are sure of the information that you're giving them, and you can give them a real added value to buying that bottle.